We're all good back there?
Yes, we are all good.
All right, I'm gonna start. All right, hi guys. My name is Caleb Coyne, senior here at Weaver's High School and also an athlete. And my topic that I'm going to present to you today is club sports and them interfering with interscholastic sports both at the high school and the collegiate level. So a little bit of my personal background. So there's 4 of us in my family. I have 3 other siblings and they all played varsity sports here at Wheat Ridge. I also played a varsity sport at Wheat Ridge. And I played some club lacrosse when I was a little bit younger that I could go into detail, but I'm not going to. But when I was playing at the youth level and also at the high school level, a few of my coaches said, Caleb, you show a little bit of promise for maybe varsity and going into college, maybe D2 or D3 lacrosse, and you have strong academics, so you got it figured out. And then, as of last year, I had 5 AP classes. I was working about 16 hours a week and managing lacrosse practices that were also for JV and varsity. So I was looking at 5 to 7, getting home late, sleeping, and then on some days we'd go have a away game, which would go till maybe 9. We wouldn't get back till 10, and then I'd be doing an AP bio packet until 1 a.m. the next night. But the problem was that when JV games, I was playing full time. I was on all the time and I got tired really fast and usually I'd run off to let some of the other guys play. But then on the varsity, I would just get to watch the entire time. Never take a step out on the field. I'd freeze, pardon my French, my ass off on the sideline, just watching the ball go back and forth, never touching the field. And the same went for practices. I'd have a JV game, I'd go up to the varsity practice, and the coach would just have me sit and watch. He wouldn't let me go practice maybe some wall ball or maybe write down some notes for the plays because I was supposed to know the plays. And then I talked with 3 of the kids, and most of the starting players and the coaches all came from one club program. So it kind of messed with a lot of those kids who were devoting their time away from academics to school and then going to practice only to sit and watch. So on an actual US scale, we have had a 2 to 8% drop in high school participation in sports. Mainly football has seen a huge decline, but it could also go for women's soccer, lacrosse as an example, swimming, etc. And so, how do we define a club? We can define a club as parents sponsoring a team in the neighborhood or the local area in order to either travel or just be an area for people to see. And so you get to, when you get older, you might travel to California for a huge tournament and you might have some colleges look at you and all that. But you would think that after all of this work, you'd have some physical problems with your body, the muscles, the late nights, and all that. And then going to school the next day, you'd think the academics would suffer as well. And over time, these accumulate to problems on a collegiate and after collegiate problem. So that was the main subject that I was looking into, was beyond clubs, do they interfere and then affect us in the future? So I looked into a few different things. I looked into podcasts, I looked into medicals, looked into sports articles, personal experience, and of course, the NCAA. And this is what I found, was that it was extremely problematic for these things to occur. Approximately 90% of collegiate athletes did play club, according to an SRS, which is, if you guys aren't taking statistics, is a stratified random sample. Thank you, Tanner. And club teams are very selective of their players, which would make sense because they want to have successful teams, they want to have the colleges look at them and develop, and the kids stay with these for very long periods of time. But then comes the physical problem, is that you're playing year-round and these injuries start coming up. And what a burnout is when you work a muscle group so much, you don't have to take a break, that it actually just kind of collapses, and it takes a long time to heal, and it just doesn't work. So that could have been an example with my shoulder, because my shoulder is extremely flexible. And as of my sophomore year, I popped it out of my socket, and I had to get physical therapy last year for about 7 months, and it still hasn't fully healed. And then we get to another thing, is that GPAs aren't really a priority to some clubs. It may be different for others, but most it's not. It's the club, you show up on time, you get all of that. And then when you get to college, those low GPAs, they want to adjust, because if you have a low GPA, you can't play in college. And so what they do is they create these things called phantom classes, which is a fake class that you never do, you never go to, but you still get to go out. These have caused a lot of scandals. Examples have been Florida State, Syracuse, and there are a lot of the other D1 schools. And we could probably correlate this with peer pressure, wanting to work a lot more on our practice so we can get on the field more, and our grades aren't really a priority because, hey, we're D1 or D2 kids, or we got plans for the future. And then some college coaches, however, on the other hand, think that clubs are the future. An example would be the Washington State basketball coach, Len Stevens. And when he was asked the question, should high school sports continue? He said, no, we should kill them. Let club sports take over. And few athletes will ultimately continue to go onto a professional level because of these low requirements. And to give you guys a little bit of statistics, here's the NCAA. And we can look at, say, men's basketball or football. And you can look at the standings up there that 3.5% of those kids for men's basketball will go from high school to NCAA. And from those NCAA, only 1.1 of those will go on to play at the professional level. And if you do the math, that's less than 0.1%. So should clubs be promising these kids that you're going to be the next Steph Curry, or you're going to be the next Paul Rabel? That's not going to happen. And so now we get down to what we can draw away. Burnouts are extremely problematic. They aren't good for kids, they destroy our lives, and etc. So on the medical side, they recommend cross-training, which is where you work muscle groups for different sports, because you could say running might work some muscle groups versus swimming works also the arms, which is extremely good. So if you burn out the legs for running, you still got other options. But if you cross-train, you work different muscle groups, which means those aren't as likely to break. Academics should also be risen. Is that because 2.3 GPA minimum requirement by the NCAA isn't really going anywhere. Unless you're extremely good, and then after that, you will go on and you'll play for 4 or 5 years, but then where do you go after that? Because you aren't going to get a high-level job if you said, hey, I only played 5 years of collegiate lacrosse at Notre Dame. And now, so I recommend a few things. One is that we connect the high school and collegiate with clubs, because these set the expectations for academic and athletic success. So if you fail in one area, you still got options for the other. Again, encourage muscle training. We should encourage academic rigor. And on the final note, we have the European model, which is where clubs are created and correlated under entire school districts. So instead of having Wheatridge lacrosse and all that, you'd have Jeffco entirety. Everybody would be playing together, and you get to go play until you're 18, and it's also an extracurricular, so you'd be taking a little bit of time off from school to work, but then you'd come back and keep your grades up. And because of this, you will see more kids having better grades, playing clubs that they want to do, but also seeing brighter futures. Thank you.